there's no such thing as self-defense. There's only violence. How you use a tool of violence will be determined whether it was justified or criminal. The biggest thing I learned as an instructor in my 30 years of doing this, when I'm talking about training the general public who really needs this information, most people don't want to do what we do, guys. They don't want to train us. They don't. When you look at it, violence is only good if you're the one using it, because it works just as good on me. So why would I want to put myself in a mindset where I'm behind the power curve? And he said, then only anywhere from 10 at the max to 5% of the time are we training full speed, until we get it right. My slogan is, that I'm known for, is violence is rarely the answer. And everybody loves that part of the statement. It's the second part that makes everybody uncomfortable. But when it is, it's the only answer.
The only answer.
I'll tell people all the time, but how many people have been trained in firearms in a class? And a couple people raise their hands. And I'll say, okay, so how were you trained? And before they say anything, I go, I'm sure what happened was you got the safety brief. They learned, how the gun worked.
Right.
And I said, they then took you into a live fire kill house. The red team was in there. They kicked the door open, pushed you in, and said, good luck. And everybody started shooting at you, right? And they're like, oh, no.
Right.
I go, of course not. I said, because what did you learn? You'd learn nothing.
Nothing. Right.
Yet, what is more chaotic than a gunfight?
Yeah.
And how do they train for a gunfight? Slow, deliberate, accurate at first.
Yes.
You earn the right to use speed. And anytime your groupings suffer, what do? You pull back on speed. So in Spec Ops community, they're calling the term now is crawl, walk, run. And that's really what they do. And what's interesting is I had a bunch of buddies from the Australian SAS, really great friends of mine. And I was having a course in Sydney, and these knuckleheads were there. And they decided they wanted to come by and train. Now, they had never trained with me. We were just friends. We met in San Diego through another mutual friend, and great guys. But they'd never really seen my training.
Right.
And they came in, and I think some of them were still drunk. And they weren't disrespectful, but they were just like, they couldn't understand why we were going slow and everything, what we were doing.
Yeah.
So I finally kicked them out at one point, and nicely. It was funny. I just go, go sober up, and go. And they were great. And they apologized later. Well, then they deploy. I get a call from them overseas on a sat phone, and they're apologizing. They're going, mate, they said, you've come up so many times during this deployment. They said, we have been training. He said, we have been going crawl, walk, run. He said, I got to tell you, 75% of our time we are spending in the crawl stage. He said, the other 15 to 20% we are in walk. And he said, then only anywhere from 10 at the max to 5% of the time are we training full speed until we get it right. And he said, we see exactly what you're training. We're coming back. We're training with you. When you get back, we want to know all the methods. We want to know what you're doing, and the way you did that. And so, again, it's how do you present it? You see, it's funny. Like when I was in SEAL training, when I was in BUDS training, the second phase was weapons and explosives. First phase, they're just destroying you. They're just physically destroying you. You're going full speed all the time. They're doing really risky stuff. They're trying to get you to quit. And the instructors are borderline sadistic, Right. Now, go to second phase, weapons and explosives, especially explosives. And guess what? Everybody's calm. They want to make sure you get it. They're slowly showing you. So I've always told people the more lethal the training, the more deliberate, slow, correct, and accurate it is. They need you to be slow, correct, and accurate first before you can, add speed to it. And what's interesting is when you do that, as you see these other great combat athletes, you see Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson, Customato had him do the number system. And I'm sure you might have seen there's a great video of him showing the number system, how he did it. But when you show how Mike originally learned it, it was 1, 2, 8, down, boom. It was all slow and deliberate until he got into it.
Picked it up, right.
and then it was there. And then you'd see during the fights, you know, Cuss would be yelling out the numbers to him.
Right.
And stuff.
Yeah.
And it was there. So Bas Rutten talks about aiming. You know, he called it aiming at first. And he talks about going down on a heavy bag and how he'd go like inch by inch. And then he'd talk about when he said, yeah, and he goes, I'd be flailing in my fights and everything until I realized, he goes, I wanted to look, he goes, like on the guy's MMA shorts, I'd see his logo and I'd hit the logo. And then next time I'd hit the logo again, he goes, and then he goes, what I found was before it would take me 9 kicks all over the place to deaden the leg. He said, when I was slow and accurate in my training, I only had to do 3 kicks because I got it to the same place each and every time. And and I deadened the leg.
Deadened the leg, yeah.
And so what you find is the people that are really good at what they do at the top of their game when it comes to putting injuries on people or combat sports or anything like that, they all end up doing some form of that type of training.
Right.
Our goal was, we just found that we got the best results by front loading everything with slow, correct, and accurate. And a problem is, like you said, Gus, people will see one small part of your training, they'll go, well, look at that, that's totally ineffective, blah, blah, blah. And I crack up. And I do this to jiu-jitsu guys all the time when they're, oh, well, you know, you go hard and fast. I go, oh, really? And then I show like famous jiu-jitsu guys teaching a new student the first time. And they're like, oh, yeah, you do this and you rap and you go. And
right.
And I just start laughing at them. I go, look at my people 3 days later, what they're doing.
Right.
3 days later, here's where they started. And 3 days later, look at them. These are totally uninitiated people. I said, but they've got good information. Because what you want to focus on, if you're training for you know, self-protection, self-defense, you want to make sure that first, whatever you teach your student is effective first. Meaning, I'm going to teach you something, and I know because I got all this data, and I'm going to show you objective video of people getting struck in this area and what happens time and time again. I'll show you the the medical reports and everything and all of that. So we know if you train for this area, you're gonna get, you know, a result. Training for effectiveness is something you can do, and you don't have to worry about efficiency. Efficiency is a luxury. If you're going to train with me for a while, then I can start, you know, after I know you're effective and you can save your life. You might be ugly, but I know you can save your life. You know where to go in the human body and get a result. If you stick with it and you're a mutant, like, you know, me and some of my instructors, and you want to keep going with this stuff, well, yeah, we're going to make you way more efficient with the tool because we have time to work on your coordination. We have time to work on skill sets. But I will not focus on coordination and efficiency until I know the person is effective first and they know what they can do. You know, they need to know where to put their effort. And you know, that's the most important thing probably. If you have to use your brain and body to protect yourself, then everything counts. You know, you don't want to find out how good somebody is at something because they will show you. And the way you get to bypass that is by effectively putting an injury on them. Right. You know, so that's you know, kind of the approach of you know what I've done. So Gus, I feel you, brother, because I hate that when people just dismiss it out of hand. Right. You know?
Yeah, and I do too. It's very interesting because for people that aren't in it, they just, it's like, you know, they have that attitude. But it's, you said a lot there, which is great, and I love it. And it's a lot of it's on par with my thinking and mentality now of just how to be doing things, like you're saying, in that way, that build up. We have a saying in Krav is like slow is smooth, smooth is fast. It's the same kind of thing. It's like the progression thing. You can't just start and do everything where it's like a 95%. You're going to miss a lot of the details and how, like you're saying, how to target and how to really cause injury, which is so important, because that's the divide between someone who's like, you know, 130 pounds soaking wet and dealing with someone who's 220, say 200 plus pounds. The great equalizer, so to speak. I've got a video here of your TED Talk just a little bit because I wanted to ask you a question related to it. So let me see. Hopefully you can check this out.
Just knowing what I know and realizing that people are not trained. The best people in the world, these prisoners, these criminals, have zero training in combat sports and martial arts. If you saw yourself having to use the tool of violence dealing with this, right now, can you look at this scenario and can you see opportunities where you could put injury on the other guy? Do you see plays? I'll give you a couple of seconds to look. And what's good about this is this There's no threat here. You can actually look. There's no wrong answers right now. You're learning.
Now, I really love this. And when I first saw this, obviously I was thinking like everybody else. I'm like, oh, what does the guy do that's getting choked? And then you move on and you talk about
here,
what you do.
I'd probably come right into the groin, come right over the neck, probably throw him into the ground, and then I'd probably stomp on him.
And that's awesome because it's like it flipped my script also, because we do a lot, especially in Krav Maga, a lot of defenses from this side, that side. You get choked, you get buried, you get all of the scenarios, right? And not once is it like at that point in my life, at least, or my training, had anyone presented things from the eyes of the person that's going to use the tool of violence, like you always talk about. It's not necessarily seeing it from the point of a good guy, bad guy. Right. So I wanted to talk a little bit, and you got a lot of that philosophy, I believe, from when you were able to go in and actually talk to people in prisons, right? People that were in those scenarios. Yeah.
So I've done interviews with guys like Sammy Gravano, and then I did Michael Thompson, the head of one of the founding members of the Aryan Brotherhood. I have one guy from the Black Gorilla family I really want to talk to that they haven't okayed it yet. And then I've also talked to members of the Mexican Mafia and how they do it. And they use violence very judiciously. And what's interesting is there was a famous study where some psychologists went to a prison and they showed self-defense techniques or scenarios to guys. And they were presented kind of like what I did. And what was interesting was these guys never saw themselves on the other side of the equation. They never saw themselves having to defend something that was already done. They always saw themselves as being the one successfully using the tool of violence.
Right.
And then the alphas, they'd go, yeah, that was good, but I would have done this, And then so they approved upon the violence, like they went in there. And that mindset, when you look at it, violence is only good if you're the one using it, because it works just as good on me. So why would I want to put myself in a mindset where I'm behind the power curve at that point? If I want to learn, and this is really hard for people to do, because in the challenge I would give everybody, that's watching this, is for the next 30 days, and fortunate for me, I don't mean it's a good thing, but there's a lot of great, opportunities to watch violence, and real violence.
Yeah. Yeah.
What I want you to do is I want you to look at it only from, ignore the story, turn the volume off, look at the situation and say, when did something happen that changed everything in favor of the other person? Meaning they did something where the first injury was caused, and then what did they do after? That's good knowledge. That is, hey, that worked. It worked again. Now it could be a horrific act. It could be a completely criminal act. You're not condoning the act. You're protecting your mind against any defensive thinking. And you're only training your mind to look for success. Right. And it is a difficult thing to do at first, but once you do it, it's amazing how your training improves, and how you're thinking, because you're not hesitating. You're giving yourself permission that once I need to use the tool, I'm only going to focus on success. And what does success look like? I say a pretty harsh term that every time I do it, it gets people, but there is nothing to learn from the victim's perspective. There's no good information there for us. We can be empathetic and we can say, hey, that's horrible, but there's no good information for us. We don't want to focus on what they did or why they did what they did. And we don't want to try to undo what they did. We want to look at who was successful using the tool and why, and then to alpha it after that. Could you improve upon it?
Right.
Do you see another opportunity that guy missed, or, he should have stepped in there and done. Now you're thinking you're putting your mind in the right context. It does not make you brutal. It does not make you a criminal at all. You will not go against your moral code. But if your life is on the line and I'm very clear. The other thing, when we train, we make sure that everybody understands the information is only good if you are devoid of choice. If you have to ask yourself, is now the time to use violence? No.
Yes.
You will never have to ask yourself when the time is. to do that. So there's lots of times we wish we could use violence, mostly in antisocial situations where somebody's being obnoxious, but it's not really a threat to you. You know, you can walk out of it and stuff. And of course, I give tons of examples of that in you know, a lot of content I put out of people, unfortunately, choosing to respond with violence. And there's a big difference between choosing to respond with violence and being devoid of choice.
I choose violence.
You know, there's no such thing as self-defense. You know, there's only violence. How you use a tool of violence will be determined whether it was justified or criminal. If it is justified, it will be ruled self-defense. So self-defense is a result term, not a training or anything like that. We train our people. We want the verdict always to be self-defense for them should they have to use our training. But if you choose to use violence when you didn't have to, well, now you're going down the path and you're probably going to have to deal with the criminal side of things. And that's a really ugly side of the house.
Yeah.
Deal with it.
People have to think of the ramifications. Absolutely. It's interesting that you say that. I actually have an instructor. We just did a knife defense seminar last week, and he said a lot of these things should make you feel uncomfortable because they are. It's like you're not a violent person by nature. You're not thinking about going and, you know, sticking a knife in someone's rib cage or doing all this, but that's just reality of the situation. We have to, you know, talk about all of that stuff. And he also says something. It's like he says self-defense is like what I do to preserve my way of life. That's the way he kind of thinks about it, and it really kind of struck a chord with me. But talking about you know, actually using this tool of violence again, what can you pick up? There's never anything good from the victim side. I want to add this video also because this is one that Sifu Gus actually hit me to, that you talk about this, and you'll know it right away, Mr. Larkin, when you see it. But I want to talk about using the tool of violence, and you got two MMA fighters here. We talked about UFC that go into this situation and they get beat by just regular folks. So let's see here.
Social aggression. Both of these fighters are extremely comfortable here. Why? Because they're used to guys getting up in their face, doing that whole thing, the pre-fight hype. They're going to perform pretty well at this point because it's just going to be basically 2-on-2.
And just so I give a quick history, I don't want to do the whole clip and take too much time, but these guys come in, they're MMA fighters, and they get into a scuffle with these other guys in a gas station, mainly because I think they've like slapped the one of the guys' girlfriends on the butt or whatever, and these guys come in, and at first they're very confident because they're MMA fighters, they're used to it, like you're saying, so I'll keep playing.
Let's take a look at this. Okay, so it's starting off. Now, this is where their skill sets, look, they feel pretty comfortable, they're flailing around, but nobody's really getting injured, which is kind of interesting. But it's something that they're used to. Now, this, I'm gonna hold it here, is where everything changes. They go outside. You'll notice we've highlighted a 2x4 that's being used. And you're gonna see that Falcoa has no idea how to deal with this. He's doing exactly the wrong thing he should be doing. And he has a choice. He can do one of two things. He can either charge forward or he can go back. One gives him the ability to actually survive the situation and probably get to the guy. The other one makes him a much easier target. Unfortunately, he chooses to be a much easier target. Let's look at the result. He gets hit. Now he's out of the page. Now you'll notice, stopping it right here, Keomena is completely focused, just like he was on the ring, with the one guy that he's fighting. He's oblivious to everything else that's around him, and that's when the same guy with the 2x4 comes running up behind him and brains him in the back of the head. This is a strike that's put him into a coma, along with the multiple strikes that you can see after this. But the key was, in the ring, he doesn't have to worry about that. He has a ref watching his back. He's used to seeing a ref in there, but he's not used to seeing another threat. And so he's not defining, he's not fighting for that. He's not moving around. He's not seeing the threat. And that's why it was so easy for this unskilled guy with a 2x4 to run right up behind him and brain him in the back of the head. So, take a look from here. It only gets worse. You'll see he goes down, and this is where they really start to put it into him.
Yeah, this really brought home to me the fact that you can be trained, you can have all the fight experience in the world, but when you get fixated on just one person, and we talk about this in my training in Krav Maga, basically not focusing on your main objective, which is usually to get home safe. You're just become fixated on pummeling one person because you have an altercation, not realizing that bad guys usually have more than one person with them. They have friends. There's things things you always have to kind of think about. And this happened to two trained guys. So even Gus, I want you to jump in on this because this is the video we used to talk about, man. So if you've got things to add to this, but I wanted to just kind of open up that discussion a little bit.
Yeah, I often talk about that when you get into more open space around more people, then everything is subject to change. I mean, as we talk about, ring fighting is different. The concept of approach is different in ring fighting than it is in street fighting, because it's more predictable in the ring, even though you're fighting some guys who are phenomenally amazing. We call them the gladiators. But in the street fight, you have no idea what's going to take place and how far it can go. And so we often talk about this all the time and create these scenarios to where, and my students are used to hearing me going, "You're dead." You're dead. Because I want them to understand that they have to focus. They can't have tunnel vision. They have to be able to approach a situation and be switched on and on a swivel all the entire time.
Yeah, we did years ago. I went to Quantico and we worked with Hostage Rescue in the unit with the FBI, really famous, good guys. And back then, everybody was training. Again, I love jujitsu. All my kids train jujitsu. I got to give the disclaimer because it's gonna sound like I'm going off on jits. Jits got really popular, Yeah. And sure enough, I'm looking at the team and I could tell they do jits. And I looked at the group and I saw the one guy. I mean, this dude, he just he had the look, the whole thing.
Well versed in jujitsu.
And I'm sitting there going, okay, so I pick him and I go, hey, you go. And he's kitted up. He's got his kit with him. And because that was the other thing that was really interesting. These guys back then, they never trained with their kit on. So they trained combatives, quote unquote, differently than they trained anything else. Everything else they trained full gear. On this, they trained it like, oh, we're going to be on mats and we're going to do this. They don't train on real surfaces. They don't do any of that stuff, which right away I thought, oh, this is interesting. So I said, okay, I can't go in. I never go into anybody, look at their training and say, oh, you suck. You're an idiot. Why are you training like this? I'm not going to get through to people that way.
Right.
What I'll do is I'll say, okay, great. I want to see you do it. Hey, how about this? You go down there, and then I grabbed 3 guys, and I told one of them, I pointed to one guy. I go, you're the sacrificial lamb. He goes, what? And I go, your job is to charge him. You just charge him, and you tie his ass up as soon as he can. Boom. Sure enough, man, this guy goes in full bore. He did a great job. Boom. He came in and attacked. This dude, I picked the right guy. This dude literally went up and did like a flying armbar on the guy. Well, the problem was, by the time he hit the ground with the guy's arm, the other 2 guys were on him, kicking him, boom, and disarming him right away.
Right.
That is a classic gangbanger situation. Yeah. They do it all the time. They send the new guy in to tie him up, and the 2 other guys come in and take the guy. This is a basic criminal assault, and it was like an eye-opener for these guys right away. And was it to say that you're not, the guy was amazing. I wouldn't want to go against him, right. Like on a just thing. The guy was sure. And these guys, the two Brazilian fighters you saw their ring. They're great. They were awesome fighters. It's not putting against it's you do what you train.
Right.
And if you don't train for this scenario, how could you be like, if I don't train for the ring and all that stuff, I'm going to suck when I get in there. But same thing, if you don't train for these type of parameters of real life, and you don't train on real surfaces, that's the other thing is, you got to train on concrete. You got to train on gravel. You got to train on, asphalt. You got to put, not all the time, but you need to understand that training in the real world, A, it can be really useful. And B, there's a lot of stuff once you're training on the ground that, you can get away with on the mat, but you don't want to do it if you're on the ground, and so it's just, and I don't have to say anything. You inherently know when you're training on this, you go, oh yeah, I don't want to do that. But if you don't give your student the opportunity to understand that and feel that kinesthetic awareness of what it's like to work on these different surfaces, you're going to get that. And if they don't have a chance of really seeing, oh, what's it like to, do I ever want to back up? Like I see this all the time. People back up all the time. I'm like, oh man, no, you always want to be going forward. Right. You go in figure eights are fine, but you never want to be backing up on a situation. We don't do well that way as human beings and stuff. I understand why people train it, but when you see, and again, I never ask you to believe me. I just show what happens to people that do that out there.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting. And to me, it's just fascinating. You know, I still, you can tell, I mean, after I've been doing this stuff for over 30 years, and I still get excited every time. And the most exciting part for me is a brand new class, people that's their first introduction. I love doing that. Like when you saw my TED Talk, those two poor guys, they were so nervous. They had, I just pulled them. I pulled them in at the last minute. That was such a hellish situation. They lost my luggage. I literally, the clothes you saw me in were the clothes that I flew in. And it was just, everything was going wrong, but the talk came off okay. Yeah. But it was really funny working with those kids. They really thought I was going to like go off on them and stuff. So that's why I'm just going really slow.
Oh, so they weren't your students. They were just people in the audience you grabbed.
No, they were just some random kids that were working. They were like tech they were like tech guys that I just pulled off the stage and stuff. They were really nice to help me out with it. But I wanted to do that. And the reason I do that is because people, so during that talk, if you listen, everybody's nodding their head, oh yeah, I get it. And then at the end I do that. Yeah. And most of them, the majority of people, you know, they look as the person being choked. And when I point that out to them, I go, hey, you're not a bad, you know, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. I go, you just haven't looked at it this way. And I said, this is more important than any of the physical stuff I just showed you. If you don't have this principle in your head, you're going to be behind the power curve against these predators. So my job is I want to put you on par. That's the best I can do. I want you to be able to, you know, I don't want them to have an advantage on you as far as thinking and using the tool. I want to put you on par. That's the best I can do. And it's 50-50 until whoever gets the first injury. Because usually whoever gets the first injury, they will then stack injuries on the person. And they're usually the one that ends up, you know, walking away.
Right. So I was going to ask you just really quickly too, as far as your class structure and stuff, you probably got multiple types of clients. When you get people in with experience, because I've experienced this myself, is it a little bit harder teaching, say, someone who has a martial arts background or even law enforcement than, say, your average layman person off the street?
I guess the approach is, there's a couple of different things. Culturally, really easy for me to teach people from Eastern Europe, South America, Asia.
Okay.
Countries and cultures that are used to dealing with real violence. They don't have to ask they don't ask the legalistic questions. They don't ask any of the stuff that we have the luxury of doing. And the funny part is, the reason, like us in the US, the reason we're able to ask about, well, it's not legal and all this other stuff, is because we are so good at violence, meaning we have a very protected society. We have an overwhelmingly strong military. We, you know, because we have the credible threat of violence, we have a very peaceful, overall peaceful society when you compare it to the rest of the world.
Right.
When, you know, when you don't have that and people understand the realities of violence, it's much easier to train them. For me, it's a pleasure because then we just get right into it right away. Trained people and trained law enforcement and military, normally what I do, because I was that guy, I don't go slow. I let them beat the crap out of each other, you know, and they'll do it.
Yep.
They'll take a couple of shots.
Enough for you.
And then I'll go, okay, you want to learn now? You know, like they'll do it because I won't put a governor on it. I mean, you know, I won't let them crush throats or anything like that, but I'll let them thump each other. I mean, we did a 30-day course. So we used to do 30-day courses out at San Clemente Island. They were instructor courses. So they were 30 straight days, 10 hours a day, 300-hour classes for the initial special operations trainer courses. I remember the first one we did at the 7-day mark, we were all pulling our shirts up and everybody was black and blue, you know, cracked ribs and everything. And we still had the rest of the course to do, you know, at that point. and so that's it. So, you know, either you can start off slow or I'll make sure you go slow. You know, I'll let you beat the crap out of each other. And it's fine. You know, it works either way. Now, in my civilian courses, I don't do that, obviously. Right. You know, I walk everybody through it and we go slow, deliberate, and correct. With the civilians, I then have to ramp them up a little bit. You know, I have to let them put a little bit into it. But I give them a good, you know, gateway to it. But the goal is also different. Listen, my operators, military or law enforcement, they're going to use this information. I know they're going to put hands on people. I expect them to do that. Therefore, we're going to really look at that side of the house. Honestly, with my civilians, there are a group of them that will want to continue training, but that's a much, I think the biggest thing I learned as an instructor in my 30 years of doing this, when I'm talking about training the general public who really needs this information.
Yes.
Most people don't want to do what we do, guys. They don't want to train like us. They don't. What they want to do is they want to learn. They want to learn, how can I live a life that minimizes the chance that I would ever need self-defense or this training. I want to learn how to live that life. Right. So that's really my goal in the initial thing is I want to show them. And the way I do it is I show them the stark reality. Hey, if you ignore everything and it gets down to this is the only thing that's going to get you out. You're going to have to do this to another human being. And so when people see that, they go, oh, and then they start pulling back and they go, okay, hey, I'm going to modify my behavior. I'm going to understand. I had, probably one of the best. I have two testimonials that are really interesting. I had one guy. He was he's a big dude. He's built like a linebacker or a lineman. He came from a Texas oil family out of Houston. Really wealthy guy. Big dude, nice guy. Not an asshole or anything, but you could tell he liked to go to honky tonks, and man, he's not going to start it, but he will finish it, right. And he gets into it. And so the second day of the course, he's waiting for me to come in, and he pulls me aside. He says, hey, I just want to thank you. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, I called my wife last night after the first day, and I told her she doesn't have to worry about me anymore. And I go, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, I used to go there. He goes, after the first day and what you showed me, I realized all these years I've been so lucky that I didn't inadvertently kill somebody, because you showed me how easy it is. The human body can, hit the ground, bounce the head off the concrete, stuff like that. He goes, I didn't run into somebody that really understands violence.
Right.
He said, because everything that I chose to respond with violence was all avoidable. And now I know the difference, and I can't thank you enough. And I'm like, great, that's the exact result I want out of that. And again, I had another guy give me a testimonial recently too, really good dude. And he basically same thing, got in a situation where he remembered one of my content pieces where a coach, is really tragic, a really great hockey coach, a girls hockey team coach. Just everybody loved this guy. He was at a bar, just having something to eat, and there was a really obnoxious guy during COVID who got drunk and everything. He had ignored it. The guy was really obnoxious, and he walks out. This guy says something to him,
right?
And he decides to get up, take action. He ends up getting pushed down a flight of stairs and killed. Over nothing.
That one's in your book, right? I think.
Yeah, there's another one in my book. This one was a content piece I did for YouTube.
Okay, maybe that's.
And then this guy referenced it. He said, he goes, my monkey brain was going off, and I was just about to say something to this guy, and then I caught myself, and I realized, I don't have to respond. I got to go pick my wife up at the airport. Yes. I'm just going to let this go. And he worked it out. He goes, had I done it? He goes, best case scenario, I would have been sitting there getting interrogated by the cops. He goes, right. Worst case scenario, he goes, I could have got killed. Over what? He goes, because the guy was flipping me off. Who cares? Right. And that's kind of it. The goal is not to use the information. The goal is to understand the tool of violence. It's something that that when violence is the answer aspect, it's part of a modification of what my slogan is. My slogan is that I'm known for is violence is rarely the answer. And everybody loves that part of the statement. Everybody's like, yeah, we all think, yep, I understand that. Boom. It's the second part that makes everybody uncomfortable. But when it is, it's the only answer.
The only answer, right.
Yeah, and that was a modification on the book title that we ended up going, when violence is the answer, because that's the interesting question. We all know, I don't have to tell you when not to use violence. We all know that. But it's really interesting to define, when would it ever be for an ethical, good person, citizen, when would it ever be justified for them to use this information? And I think, to me, that's the most, as instructors, that's probably the best gift we can ever give anybody, is that definition.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, I reiterate to all the students, it's like, you want to just get home safe. You're not out here to have a freaking MMA fight. That's not the goal. And the nuggets just keep on dropping as we speak with Mr. Tim Larkin once again. Guys, I'm curious, are you picking up what he's putting down? because there's a whole lot of knowledge base there, and I really don't want you guys to miss out. Please let me know in the comments, drop them down below, of course, and let's engage and let's speak past the video, and we'll share our thoughts.
Are we learning yet?
And of course, the learning will continue in the next part of this interview.
If you get any of the books by Robert Greene, if you get something like 48 Laws of Power, or better, I think, is The Laws of Human Nature, and you immerse yourself in human nature and really understand how people communicate and operate, you will be able to avoid probably 95% of all incidents.
So please tap back in for that. Guys, let's share this content so we can get the information out to even more people like ourselves who are into self-defense, martial arts, all that great stuff. Hit a like because it really helps me out. And by the way, tap the bell as well so you guys can get notifications of when we drop new videos on the channel, lives, all that. And I'll leave all of my socials over here, and everywhere so you guys can follow me and get access to even more behind the scenes goodness. By the way, now's the time to become a member to not only support, but to be privy to all of the exclusive content that I have, as well as things that I have to leave on the cutting room floor with interviews like these and others just for time constraints. Trust me, you're gonna like it. And if you're really into self-defense, check out this video over here for another great perspective. Guys, stay safe, see you in the next round and the final part of this interview, and keep punching.
Look at this one, look at that one, look at this one, look at that one. Look, are you kidding me?
Hey, this is Tim Larkin. Thanks so much for watching Kung Fu Chronicles. These guys are great.